Okay, seems we are up and running and live. Good evening, everyone from Dubai. It's Phil Pendlebury here, and I hope you're having a super mega large day. For any visitors from the Middle East, assalamu alaikum, mahaba, good to have you with us too. And if we do have any visitors from Thailand, sawadee kap, good to see you. So, today's stream, a bit of a surprise. We were going to move to the Steinberg channel this month, but we didn't quite have time to figure it all out, the technicalities. So that's going to be happening next month. Tell you more about that later. What we're going to do today, well, as I just said, we recently did a little seminar in the wonderful Banana Sound Studios in Bangkok, Thailand. A lot of very talented people there, and it went really well, and it was really nice to meet them all. I hope some of them are going to see this later on. But one of the questions that came up was about matching dialogue. So for example, we have some dialogue that's been recorded in a field, or in the field even, but it could be a field. It quite often is in a field, but in the field, which is the kind of industry term, field recording, as it were. And then you find that there's some problem with it, and you want the actor to come into the studio and do some ADR. ADR meaning automatic dialogue replacement, or automated dialogue replacement. There's a few different, words for the A. But you get the idea. The actor comes into the studio. He's in a very isolated position in a recording studio with a different microphone. And you then want to make that sound like the field recording. So this is ADR, and what we're going to do today is have a look at matching some of that dialogue. How do we get the newly recorded ADR to sound like, or as close as we can, to the original recording? And the original recording might well have background noise and so on. So that's what we've got today. So how do we do that? How do we get the workflow streamlined? Now, we've touched on this before using specifically Nuendo. But today, what I'm going to do, because once again, from the seminar in Bangkok, we did some stuff with Spectralayers. So I'm going to integrate both of them today. I'm going to show you two different workflows that involve Nuendo with Spectralayers. That's using the ARA extension of Spectralayers. And then we'll probably do most of it in Spectralayers standalone for the second half. So I think that's all the intro we need. Let me just check my notes. Yeah, so that's all we need for the time being. Just like I said, to reiterate, we've got field recorded dialogue with some noise, and we're going to mess around with that, see what we can do with it. And we've got an ADR replacement dialogue of a couple of lines, which, we're going to try and match those to the field recorded dialogue. Okay, bit of a long intro there, and we'll have a little chat afterwards. So please do stick around until the end, because a couple of things we want to chat about when we get to the end of the stream. And let's move into it. Okay, so I've got my little demo project up and running in Nuendo. Hello. And before we do anything else, I'm going to put headphones on for this as usual, so that I can hear what's going on. And just to say that, if any of you guys feel like putting headphones on, it might help with this, because some of the stuff may be quite subtle, especially when we're dealing with, things like the background noise and so on. So it might be useful to get the headphones on so that you can hear, the fine detail, as it were. So I'm going to show two scenarios today. Let's get the camera off so you can see the whole screen. So I'm going to show you two hypothetical situations here. We've got some field recorded dialogue, which I've emulated, with a messed up section, and we need to do ADR with one of the lines on that. Actually, there's two lines, but we'll probably only work on one of them. Otherwise, it'll take too long. So we need to match the sound of the ADR to the field recording. And then the other scenario is we want to clean up the original field recording and remove the ambient sound and noise. And so we're going to look, like I said earlier, at some alternative ways to deal with these scenarios. So let's have a quick listen to what we've got. We can probably drag these because we're only dealing with 2 tracks today, and let's have a listen to the field recorded audio or the emulation. It's my voice, and what I've done is I've overlaid some Atmos, funnily enough, from somewhere in Thailand. So I've overlaid some kind of atmospheric noise to that, and I've treated the voice so that it's got an outdoor ambience. Won't go into how that was done, but to me it sounds quite realistic. So let's once again get the camera off and have a listen.
Hello, can I help you? No problem. Come on in and I'll show you some of the things going on here. We're recording lots of voices today. Let's have a look and see what's going on in Studio 1. Looks like someone's reading the news. Here in Studio 2,
So just pause there for a second, just to point out what's going on. So you can hear that there is the ambience. There's various lines of the script. I've kind of left them all without too many gaps, so that you can clearly hear the background noise. And to me, you can imagine that that was recorded maybe with a boom mic or even a lav, I guess, so that it's completely different to the sound of what would happen when the actor comes in to do the ADR. Right, let's just have a little bit more of a listen. Like I said, we don't need to listen through the whole thing.
Recording an advert for a new movie which is coming out next year. In Studio 3, here recording a television advert.
Okay, so there was the first little mistake, and actually what I've done there is just reversed some of the audio. But
in Studio 3, here recording a television advert.
So you can imagine if you got that back to the studio, and no matter how clean the dialogue is, you're going to have to get the actor to come in and replace that. There's really no way around it. It is reversed, so in our case we could probably have reversed it back again. So there's more of that.
Showing this strange looking gentleman around the studio. Can we come in? Okay, thanks Jeremy. Here's Studio 6. Okay, I think we should leave that there. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So once again there we've got another error which needs sorting out. So that's basically the element of the actual recorded dialogue. Then let me give you an example of the ADR. So the actor comes into the studio, in this case it's me, and we go through the process with ADR. We've got other videos on that about how all the ADR works and all the technical side of it, how to get it up and running, how to look at it on different screens and so on. There's other videos on that, so we don't need to go into all the technicalities of how to do ADR today, but we're just going to go through the treating of the dialogue. Right, so a quick listen to the replacement dialogue.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So comparing that to...
Hey, I think we should leave that there. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So let's use that piece there as the example when we get to it. So one of the first things I want to do is is to show you how to easily mark all these areas of dialogue. At the moment, you can see we've got, let's just drag that down. We've got a marker track here called ADR. And it would be useful to be able to kind of skip through these different pieces of dialogue, even though they're all recorded in one file. So how do we do that? As I said, in this case, really not necessary because we've already got the ADR, but I want to show you that. We need to select the audio itself. We go up to the menu, we go to Audio, Advanced, Detect Silence. You can see underneath that there was an option to detect silence with current settings. But what we're going to do here is, just do it from scratch so you can actually see the dialogue itself. And when I'm saying dialogue, I mean the dialogue box as opposed to the actual dialogue. So let's zoom in on that so you can see that a little bit clearer. So here we've got the detect silence area. So there's a new feature which is aimed at detecting dialogue, and you literally just have to select that and off you go. So let's just quickly do a quick analysis with that, see what happens. So you can see that it's actually picked up quite a lot of the dialogue quite nicely for us there. And we can actually just preview.
Studio 2. Okay, I think we should leave.
And there's a bit of a gap there that's not been picked up quite well. So quite often the dialogue setting will work quite well for this, and there's no need to go any further. You just do what I've just done, analyze on process, and you'll get a result. However, in this case, I'm going to show you peak level. So I've made some settings here. Basically what we've got, if you can see these red lines here, we've got a threshold. It's a bit like a noise gate. We've got a threshold where we can tell the detect silence box where to kind of ignore things. So as long as I've got that set roughly, if you can see, look, if I lift the level up there, it gets higher and higher. And obviously if we had the red lines there, it would not detect anything. So what we want to do is try and get it so that you can see the noise in the middle, but the dialogue is kind of sticking out at either side. And the next thing we've got, I like to link these for this purpose as well. The next thing we've got is the open time and close time, pre-roll and post-roll. So I've got those kind of set how I like them. You have to mess around a bit with those. So let's have a quick analyze of that. And there you can see now we've got all those areas nicely kind of marked out.
In Studio 1. Looks like someone...
So that particular area that was missing earlier on, or not was missing, was actually extra earlier on, that area of noise. We've now managed to, get rid of that. So I've got these set quite nicely. Once again, a bit fiddling about. We won't worry about regions and fades for the time being. And what we're going to do is we're going to, rather than stripping the silent elements, which would just leave us with only those files or segments, what we're going to do is keep the silent segments, but we're going to mute them and we're going to select them. And the reason for that, you'll see in a minute. So let's process that. And wow, super quick. And you can see that we've got all those silent, or they're not silent, those are the background noise, the atmosphere pieces. And they're all selected and muted. So what I want to do now is actually just drag those to another track. I'm going to hold down the Control key so that they stay in the right position. We can name them atmosphere. Hope I've spelt that right. And let's just move them up underneath there. So now what we've got is, as you can see,
no problem. Come on in and I'll... looks like someone's... Here in Studio 2, we're recording an advert for a new movie.
so we've got all those parts that are now separated, but still we don't have the locators. So what I want to do now is make some cycle markers that are going to encompass each of those parts. So it's quite simple. Again, in Nuendo, we literally just select all the parts. And again, you've probably seen this. And we're going to go to create markers from selected events. Once again, there's a dialog. Don't worry about that because all we're going to do is that. And now you can see that we've got cycle markers for each of those audio parts, each of the relevant parts of dialogue. And so now it's very easy to just double click, or there's various methods to do this, but in this case, we can just double click on the cycle marker and select that particular area.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. With these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give...
And what we could do then is, let's take this little part as an example. We can then open up the ADR panel and you'll see that you've got all of the parts there. There's no dialogue in them at the moment. So if we go to the relevant one, I think it's this one. Yeah.
Okay, I think we should leave...
We can actually paste that in. That's the dialogue now.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. With these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy.
So that's what the actor would need to recreate. And if we close that down and bring up the video player, there you can see the dialogue. You wouldn't normally have that much dialogue in one place, I don't think.
I think we should leave that there.
All right, not to worry about that anyway. So, okay, so we've now got a very easy way to flick between. So we'll go to the other part that we were going to look at, which would be this part here.
In Studio 3, we're recording a television advert.
So this is the active part that we're listening to at the moment. And once again, bring up the ADR box and we'll just paste in that little bit of dialogue there. Just for the sake of, putting it in and showing you quickly how that works. Okay, so let's move on. Once again, let's go back to this larger section here. We can zoom in a little bit more. And if you just joined us, of course, this is the field recording and this is the ADR that was done later. All right, so let's have another listen to the field recording. So we've moved all this actual background noise out of the way, but of course it's still there.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. With these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy.
It's still there underneath that voice, which obviously, we need to do something about that. So just out of interest, what we can do now, we wouldn't actually do that in this case because we're not even going to use that. But I'd just like to show you the Voice Separator plugin. So if we bring up Voice Separator, oops, there it is. And this is the built-in Voice Separator plugin that comes with Nuendo. We can zoom in on that if possible. And let's have a play.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. With these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, I think we should leave that there. If you don't mind, Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So really the idea there is if we wanted to, we could remove some of that background noise, you know, quite easily, or even all of it. Or in this particular case, not going to worry about that.
Hey, I think we should leave that there.
But bear in mind that that is a free plugin that's part of Nuendo, and I'm sure you can find uses for that. In fact, we'll probably show that in a minute with the second scenario. Okay, let's get rid of the voice separator for the time being. Close the mixer down. And what we're going to do is have a look at this ADR part.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind...
So getting to the point, finally, we want to make this sound like that. Okay, so we want to make this orange part sound like the blue part. Once again, I'll give you a comparison.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. With these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick...
Okay, so what we do here is we're going to use the sound profiler, which is, again, part of Nuendo. And the sound profiler, or otherwise known as tonal match, works using direct offline processing. So there's a couple of ways. What we need to do is we need to give it the reference, which is the field audio, and the target, which is our ADR dialogue. And there's a couple of ways to do this. What I like to do is just literally just select the actual references panel, which we can do. We're zoomed out. Okay, we can go to audio, and we can go to find it, sound references. There we are, and you can see it's already there. If it wasn't there, what we'll do is we'll select that part, click the plus button. I should zoom in so you can see. Add field audio.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
All right, so we've selected our reference for future use, and there's a whole bunch of those. If you want to add more of them, you can. So now what we're going to do is we're going to select the ADR part itself and go to direct offline processing. There it is. Let's zoom in. You can see a bit better. So we've got our ADR part selected. We now go to Profiler. And this is another thing that I get asked about a lot. How do we get the tonal match plugin? Well, first of all, it works in AD in the direct offline processing. It's not a plugin as such. And also it's called tonal match here. But if you want to bring it up, it comes up as sound profiler. So you can see now that in this little area here, it says field audio.
Okay, I think we should...
And if we press the little E button, you can see here that this is the reference that I selected earlier, and there could be others of those, like I mentioned, or you could add a new one while you're in this. So you could do it all, you know, in this process itself. But I like to do it in advance so that we're not messing around trying to select files and so on and so forth. Okay. So how does it work? Well, let's have a listen. So basically what it's trying to do is match that kind of EQ scale there to the selection. So let's have a listen. We'll turn the ambience off.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word.
So you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound quite right. And of course, what's missing from that is the ambience. Now, we do have an ambience control here. Let's see.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So that would be one way of doing this. We could now process that, and we could dial up the ambience until it sounds right. And what you've got there is basically a result on that ADR file. In fact, let's apply it. Let's just apply it and have a listen.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind,
And here's the original.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
Okay, so the levels are slightly different, but other than that, it's quite a convincing little match. So, all right, let's undo that, put it back how it was. Just make sure we've got back to...
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So we're now back to the original. So the other thing we could do, and this is a very similar kind of scenario, but we're going to bring Spectralayers into this in a minute. But first, what we'll do is we'll go to this field audio again, and we'll bring up the plugin from earlier on, which was the Voice Separator. And what we do is actually, maybe we'll just do this in direct offline processing. Yeah, because then we can do it all very quickly. So we've got that selected. We're going to go to plugin. We're going to go to separator. And what we're going to do is completely remove the background noise this time. So let's just check.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
Don't worry about that little glitch. There's always a little glitch at the beginning. So one more time.
Okay, I think
As you can see, that's gone. Let's go one more time.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. Here with these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy.
Now you might be wondering why am I doing this? Well, just to show really that we can actually remove the background noise from that, and we'll get a better result in the end, because the EQ curve from the field audio won't include that background noise. Of course, then we have the problem that when we do the ADR, as in, changing the EQ of that, there will be no ambience there. So this is why I keep these other parts earlier on. So let's just process this, do it quickly.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
So, like I said, it doesn't matter that that's a little bit artifacty or whatever you want to call it. We're just going to process that. Let's make it a new version. Done. The level's a little bit low, so maybe we'll just increase it a little bit. So quick listen, only to the field audio.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. Here with these now and that. In fact, if you don't...
So now we can select that again. We can go over to audio, and we can go to sound references. We'll remove that, and then we'll make sure it's selected and add it, field audio 2. That's the new one that we've just done. We now select our original ADR. We go to the profiler plugin. Sorry. There we are. And this time we're using field audio 2 as the reference. Let's have a listen.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. Here with these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to...
And let's have a listen to the result.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here.
One more time.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind.
And the result?
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So that has matched that quite perfectly. And what we would do then, of course, would be to just make a copy of some of that background noise that was extracted earlier on. And there we've got a finished result.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
So that's basically using Nuendo. There's a few techniques there. I know I mixed them up a little bit. It always happens when we're doing live streams. I've got some notes here. But I keep kind of thinking maybe we should skip that and go back to that. Never mind. I think we got the point across, and I hope you'll agree. So what I want to do now is bring Spectralayers into the field, literally. The first thing I want to do now is just get everything back to normal. So we'll do some undos there, and then we need to bring up the mixer and remove the voice separator. And let's have a listen.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
So basically what I'm going to do in the second half is do a similar process, not all of it, because obviously we need Nuendo to lay things out. Spectralayers is not really meant for that. But the beauty of it is, as you probably know from some of my other videos, you can use Spectralayers within Nuendo as an ARA process. So let's just quickly do a quick ARA process, and then we'll open up Spectralayers itself to show how it does a similar job to what we've just done. All right, so full screen again, and we're going to select this part here. Have another quick listen.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
And there's a few ways we can add an ARA process. We can go over to the menu, and we can go audio. Always lose this, extensions. It's right down at the bottom now. Let's just do that one more time so that you can see. Audio, extensions, Spectralayers. Or we can use the secondary right-click menu, which is my preference, and we'll just do that. Okay? And you'll see that Spectralayers will come up. Let's make sure it's nice and visible. Zoom you in. And now we're using Nuendo's transport within Spectralayers.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. With these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, I think we should leave that there. So, as this is in ARA mode, what we could do now is we can use any of the modules. I'll just bring up my interface layout with the modules so that you can see them. Spectralayers works by splitting things into layers usually. Again, we've got other videos on that, so not to worry now. But for example, when I showed this in the Banana Studios in Bangkok, everybody was very impressed. Some people weren't even aware of the power of Spectralayers. So I thought it'd be worth to show some of the kind of dialogue-y stuff very quickly now. Okay, so we're still in ARA mode. And for example, let's go to Unmix Noisy Speech. And there's the application of it, and that's it, it's done. And what we end up with is, we end up with two layers. One is the speech and one is the noise. So let's have a listen. Okay, I think with these now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
And you can treat that and play around with it to your heart's content. But that is all being done now inside a Nuendo. And all we have to do when we're kind of happy with the result would be to, again, using my favorite method, which would be make extension permanent. And that would then kind of burn that treatment into that file. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is going to close down Nuendo and show you some of the matching things that we can do within Spectralayers itself. So let's say goodbye to Nuendo, and won't worry about any of the other stuff there, and we'll load up our Spectralayers. So here's the Spectralayers standalone application, fully open. And let's just whip through this to show you how Spectralayers can deal with those things. So let's open our field. Okay, you've heard all that before. And then we'll open the other file, which is a very loud.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. Hello, can I help you? Okay,
Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is actually, I think we'll just, yeah, we'll just do it manually, so because we're live, so I don't want to be messing around, you know, adjusting the levels while we're trying to do the stream. So
hey, I think we should leave that.
So I've just done a manual gain. I took a guess, and there we are. Right. So the first thing, let's have a look. Once again, I need to pull up my view so that you can see everything. And we're going to do unmixed noisy speech on the field audio. So let's apply that. And there we have it.
Sorry about that.
So we've got the noise as one layer. If you're used to, you know, Nuendo and other DAWs, you can look at layers as like individual tracks that have been split up, you know, by Spectralayers. And that's the basis of how Spectralayers works, splitting things up into layers. Of course, there's lots of other controls as well, but for our purpose, let's just stick to the modules. Okay, so we've got the speech, and there's the bit that we were looking at.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
Not bad. So we've done unmixed noisy speech, but what we'll do is we'll probably yeah. So what we've done is we've used unmixed noisy speech before any other process because it keeps the background noise for us on a separate layer. So it's a similar kind of thing to what we did in Nuendo. So there's the noise layer once again, and both layers together.
Okay, I think we should leave that there.
But what we can do is now select the speech layer, and then we can do a voice denoise. So let's do that in a full, you know, just a quick process. And have a listen.
Okay, I think we should leave that there. Now and that. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick word with Tracy. Just give me 1 minute.
And the reason why I'm doing this, you might be thinking, well, this is all the other way around again. This is like, you know, but cast your mind back 20 minutes or so when we were in Nuendo. The reason that I'm doing this is because I want to get that signal, that voice, as clean as possible. Not bothered about a few artifacts, but I want to get it as noise free as possible, let's put it that way, so that I can take an imprint of it and move the EQ or from that over to the ADR. So if I put that all back to normal, what I would do is I would go to the modules chain and let's clear it off. We did Unmix Noisy Speech. You've seen this before in my last video, so we're not going to go into fine detail right now, but you've seen how it works. So Unmix Noisy Speech, and then we'll do a voice denoise. And don't forget that with the voice denoise, we're working on the layer, which would be speech that's being generated by Unmix Noisy Speech. So we've now got our two little processes. We can apply that. There goes your Unmix Noisy Speech, and there goes your voice denoise. And what we end up with on that layer is some nice...
Okay, I think we should leave showing this strange looking...
like I said, it's not glitch free. We could work on that in a different way to do that. And I should just mention one other little, yeah, of course. Because we've got the noise quite clearly here, what we can do is also a standard denoise. So with the standard denoise module, we'll select some of the actual background noise. If it's constant, which in this case it is, we can do register noise, and then we'll deselect that so that it applies the process to everything, and leave everything else, and we can just do apply. And that actually gives us a slightly different result.
Okay, I think
a lot more glitchy. So I don't think, you know, we're going to use that. But you could, and you could hone it in a little bit. So once again, back to our modules chain. It's all still there. We could have saved that as a preset. We click apply. And we're going to end up with a relatively clean signal.
We should leave that there.
Let's put it this way. There's no noise.
Gentlemen around this.
So a quick comparison between what we want to replicate.
Hey, I think we should leave that there.
And
we should leave that there. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have a quick...
So you can clearly hear that this is recorded in a studio, you know, with a proper microphone and a reasonably quiet setup. And that this...
Okay, I think we should leave...
Even though we've got rid of all the background noise, it's still got a different sound. So the final little icing on the cake, we're going to use Spectralayers EQ Match. So let's do that. There's the EQ Match module. We're going to select, let's say, yeah, why not just use the same part? We'll select that part. We'll register the EQ. As you can see, I've already done it. So let's maybe, yeah, we'll just register the EQ. It's a bit like registering the noise. We can put that up. All right. And then once again, we don't want to make this act on the selected part here. We now want to this part. So we could select some of it, or in my case, I'm just going to leave it all open and we'll hit apply.
There. I had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going...
Still needs some gain reducing, and we could have built that into the process really, couldn't we?
Had no idea they were in here. In fact, if you don't... I think we should leave that there.
Let's do this again. Let's do EQ Match again. Register the EQ.
No problem. Come on in and I'll show you some of the things going on here. We're recording lots of voices today.
It's actually quite amazing how well Spectralayers has cleaned that up, so it sounds almost like a studio recording again. But anyway, so once again, I'm going to make sure that this is back how it was. I'm going to run the modules chain to get rid of the background noise. Done. I'm going to select the speech layer only and select, let's just select all of it. Register the EQ. Go over to the and hit apply.
I think we should leave that there. I had no idea. I think we should leave that there.
So there you have it. That is pretty close. And with a little bit of tinkering when we're not live, so you've got, you know how it is, and I'm sure you guys know, and I know there'll be a few people say, oh, get on with it, Phil, but you know how it is. Sometimes it's a bit like looking for a snare drum. Would you want to see a recording of somebody looking for a snare drum for 2 hours? So what I tend to do is move into things a bit quickly, and sometimes we'll skim things and sometimes we miss things out. Now it would be just a case of we would go over to File and we would export the layers, and hopefully it would be Nuendo that you know that you're using. So that really covers everything that I wanted to do today. Yeah, we've been through the main thing, which was various ways to get one dialogue sounding like another dialogue using Nuendo and Spectralayers. And as you can imagine, combining those two methods using Nuendo's free built-in tools, I mean, it's amazing really that all this stuff is free, to be honest. And Spectralayers, either in ARA or in standalone mode. And again, look, if you're not familiar with Spectralayers, I'm not trying to do a sales job here, but if you're not familiar, have a look at the price compared to the competitors. It's just ridiculous. And it's still evolving. And, you know, an incredible tool. And I've just literally scratched the surface of it. All right, so before I say bye-bye again, I mentioned earlier on, there's two things I want to quickly mention. I hope you're sticking around for this, but if you're not, feel free to move on now. But yeah, hopefully, I think we're 99.9% that I will see you on the Steinberg channel next month. We've got a plan set up. We're going to be doing a part 1 and a part 2 video each month, which will be released separately. So really looking forward to that. Hope some of you will follow me through there. As I said last month, even if we're doing that, doesn't mean this channel is going to go dead. We'll, in fact, probably be doing some other things on this channel. So, you know, it'd be nice for you guys to stick around as well. Thank you for that. And thanks for your support so far. You know the routine, like and subscribe and all that. Finally, I want to say another big kopkunmark to the guys at Banana Sound Studios in Bangkok. Like I said, I was over there in August officially for Steinberg. We did a seminar covering a lot of the things that we've already done on the live stream. I had a wonderful guy who was translating into Thai, because my Thai, putai nit noi, my Thai is not very big, not a lot. So a wonderful job. And what an amazing facility and a great bunch of people. If you're ever in Bangkok, or in fact, if you ever have a budget to go and record somewhere, I highly recommend you get in touch with those guys at Banana Sound Studios in Bangkok. Okay, yep, indeed. That's it from me for this month. Like I said, I hope I will see you on the Steinberg channel next month. Have a great rest of the day. See you soon. Super mega large.